Welcome, everyone, to our podcast, Cultivating a New Generation. And today is a very, very special occasion because I am airing the 100th episode of this podcast. I am really, really honored by the most special guest, Natasha Rocha. And we are going to talk about a very, very good topic to begin the next 100 episodes: how to reach your highest potential. That is the title of our podcast. And I am really, really glad that I am with you, Natasha. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation. And for the people that haven't listened about you or don't know you yet, can you just introduce yourself, please?
I can for sure. Congratulations on reaching this milestone of 100 episodes. That's pure dedication, and yeah, I'm so grateful to be here and to help you mark this special occasion. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. So yeah. So a little bit about myself in that sense is I work within the Akashic Records, which is really your book of life. And there's so much more than that. And I also do craniosacral therapy as well. So working very much with the nervous system on all areas. But I'm also very lucky to have been really fifth generation of people that are into spirituality, and it's a fantastic, because it's always given me, I suppose, a different outlook of life, which has become very, very normal now, which I'm super excited about as well. um, yeah, so this topic for me in living to your highest potential is so important, and it's a big message that has been coming through in the Akashic Records and messages, because one of the things that I get asked all the time is, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And a lot of the times when it comes to answering the question on purpose, it's very much that we're generally always on purpose, because we're always drawing towards us the experiences that we need to grow, to expand, to get to know who we are. And hopefully, become better people, and in turn make it a better world. But a lot of the times the Akashic Records is not so much concerned about what are you on purpose. The question has been arising, are you living to your highest potential? Are you doing things to your highest potential always? And like everything, is like, are you eating to your highest potential? Are you loving to your highest potential? Are you, every interaction, are you doing it to your highest potential? So it's kind of like being kind of like pushing me a little bit into, is what I'm doing in the highest potential in this very moment. So it's been quite interesting. So thank you for creating this podcast where we can have a discussion about this.
I completely agree that we really need to step more into that potential, into that version that we have. And um, I have met several people throughout my life and in different backgrounds. And I always observe that, as you mentioned, people are on their own purpose without many times knowing what they are doing, and sometimes that's why their lives seem like a little bit foggy or cloudy, or because they don't have time, as they do, as they mention, they don't have time for themselves, and they are just grinding in either a company or in their own work, and they get lost in technicalities, let's say, and they don't listen to their bodies, they don't listen to their emotions. So it's pretty clear that the message within themselves is, well, what am I doing here? Of course they are going to have that question because they their own soul is speaking with them, is trying to speak, but there is no way many times for people to listen unless they suffer something. No,
Yeah.
unless, so many times we have seen this, and in our own lives sometimes happens also, that when we have a very strong turning point in our lives, and struggle, whether it is emotional or physical, we set time, or we have time now to reflect on our own lives and what have we done sometimes to deserve what happened, sometimes just what have we done in our own lives, and we question things. And that's the most important thing, questioning, no?
I agree with you. I'm very curious, and it's always good to be curious about what happens, right? So it's very. I find that I step in very much into observation. How is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? What am I feeling? What is this meaning? And all the rest of that. So, for example, the other day I got a parking fine, just like a stupid reflection, like a little reflection. I got a parking fine, and I was like, and I had paid for parking, and then for half an hour I was just talking, and time disappeared. I played time a lot, and then by the time I realized it'd been 20 minutes that the parking had expired, and I paid again. And when I got there, the parking attendants are so efficient in Edinburgh that I already had a fine. So I was like, oh man, what's going on? And this morning in the shower, I was like, a lot of things come to us in the shower because it's a meditative state and water amplifies things as well. And I was like, oh, I got a parking fine because I was parked. And I looked at it being parked in life because I had accepted a distraction that wasn't part of my alignment in my purpose. And it was quite interesting in that fact because I was like, you're parked. You're not meant to be parked right now. You're meant to be in motion, kind of a thing. So I was like, oh, that's like a little sign, that I was like, okay, I get it now. I understand, right? So it's just silly things in those reflections. But it's like you say, a lot of the times we ignore the signs because our body's so resilient, and we're just taught to push through things. Oh, I'll sleep on the weekend. Oh, I'll sleep next week. Oh, I'll sleep next month. Oh, I just need to push myself past this project. Oh, I just need to finish this, and it's like, and you keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And then you get a cold, which means slow detox. And you're like, okay, I'll just work through it. I'll just ignore it. And then there's another little knock, and you're like, again, the body's so resilient, and you ignore it, you shove it, you go, okay, I'll get to this, and it's always putting ourselves last. And usually what happens is when it starts getting to that stage of the physical signs, it means that it's already bypassed the mind, the mental body. It's already bypassed the emotions, the emotional body, the etheric body, which is the body that provides energy to this body. And then it's starting to make its last protocol is when it manifests in the body. And trust me, I know I broke my leg in 5 places once, right? And I thought I'd be done, and I was out for 6 months. But it was that change that I was resisting, right? That I was resisting. I kept moving forward. Oh, it's just one more project. Oh, it's just next week. Oh, it's this, until I got to a stage where I actually literally had to stop moving. And I was forced to sit with it and contemplate and heal and slow down once again in order to move forward. And I think a lot of the times we ignore those signs until it's kind of like we get to a stage where we're questioning, who am I? Why am I here? What is the point of life? Right. And a lot of the times I get asked, like, how do I live to my highest potential? Like, how do I know what my purpose is? And a lot of the times purpose doesn't have to be grand. It could be just experiencing life to its fullest potential, or experiencing whatever, or being a dad, or being a mom, or, having a career or not having a career. It could be, or it could be that you're changing humanity. We have this playground to enjoy, and it doesn't always have to be grand, and sometimes it does, but not bad. And usually the answers that come through from the Akashic records is what excites you, what brings you joy, because then you're in that vibrational frequency. So if you're working in a space where you're happy to wake up on Mondays, I love Mondays, right? Because it's that focus spirit, is like, new week, let's start again. I'm living my passion, I'm living my purpose, I'm living to my excitement, I'm living my joy, which kind of like starts to bring more things towards you to be joyful for. And it starts to put you in a flow of life. That, sometimes we don't even know why that's coming through, but it brings us joy, or we following that gut instinct, that intuition, that draw towards it, and it's listening to those. And if we're busy in the everyday, we don't listen to that. We don't listen to that. Oh, I'm being pulled in this direction. Let's move. You're very much focused on the process of everyday life. And sometimes it's good to have process. Absolutely. I agree with it. But we need to have a little bit of space. We need to be agile to respond to the opportunities that life throws us.
Mm-hmm.
Is the other thing as well, which is quite important in always stepping into that observation. Why is this showing up for me? What could I do with this? How does it feel in my body? How does it feel in my mind? Right? Because if your heart and your head are in alignment, you're being led by your soul.
I couldn't agree more that we just build up so much until it is impossible for our body to stand the pressure, and even to our own emotions. You
Mm-hmm.
can just notice when you are not in alignment by how you feel, and all of those turmoil that you feel inside of you. And as you mentioned, well, I know what I'm feeling like that, but I don't have time, and I will do it later, or I will deal with this later, until you start seeing bigger and bigger proofs that you need to just pause. And we
Mm-hmm.
don't understand that because we are very stubborn into doing, and we let ourselves be taken by the narrative, as you mentioned, no? That
Yeah.
we have to be extremely successful and wealthy and have a lot of things, and just these social platforms that paint a face of people that they are always happy and always having success and everything, and all of those things that are just um, mainstream messages and noise, and things that are just going to make you feel low, make you feel not enough, make you feel that you don't deserve a life like the one that they are depicting, and
Yeah.
any other messages. But they are not yours. They are the purpose of those platforms, and they are the purpose because they want to market you with
Yeah.
certain things. They want to lure you to fill the void. No,
Yeah.
they are creating the void first, and then they have the solution, of course, to fill the void.
Yeah.
So when we feel that, is when we start looking more for things to fill that space, and that is not a space that was in yourself. It
Yeah.
was an space that you created just because you were listening too much to those messages. And I agree that the potential of everyone is in the small things, the
Mm-hmm.
potential that to make our children happy, to be a good mom, to be a good dad. That is a highest potential, because
Mm-hmm.
in doing that, we are going to improve the life of them, and we are going to improve the next generations, and we are going to improve the, at least the environment that we are living in. So that is a very good analogy to understand that our potential is in everything that we do. If you are enjoying it, as you mentioned, if you find joy in what you are doing, no?
Yeah. Or find a way to make something fun, right? Kind of as
Also.
well that you don't enjoy just seeing it from a different perspective. But you're so right. Like I had a friend of mine the other day say to me, you know what, you look like you've always got your shit together. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she goes, no, it always looks like I was like, are you talking about social media? And she said, yeah. I'm like, that's marketing. I was like behind the scenes it's kind of like, and it's like you say, it's those platforms, it's kind of like, and it's not that I'm trying to portray that, it's just like, and you'll see in my videos on YouTube I make mistakes and all sorts of stuff, and I'm okay with that, but there's this perception that is placed out there that people try and fit into to other shoes, and it's kind of like we all have, we're always progressing, we're always working through, always refining, always I always say that the work is never done. We're always healing. We're always, it's about progression. It's not about perfection. Is the other thing that I say. We're always progressing. We're always expanding. We're always growing. We're always, stepping into what is the next potential. How can I expand myself to a space that is uncomfortable? Right. And that's the other thing, is getting used to living in the uncomfortable. Like a few years ago, just to do this, I wouldn't be able to speak. And I used to get all, my words would get plugged up and all sorts of stuff. But it's kind of like, no, I'm going to do this because this is part of my passion, it's part of my purpose, and I'm going to do it to my highest potential. And the more I do it, the less uncomfortable it becomes. And I've started getting used to living in the uncomfortable, because I think the more we create safety in our lives, the smaller our circle becomes.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember I had just moved to Canada, so I was born in South Africa, came traveling to the UK, and then I was here for 13 years, met a Canadian, moved across to Canada, and I thought, you know what? As an African, I'm going to embrace the minus 40 degrees of Calgary, right? I felt like that movie in Cool Runnings. When he first comes out of the airport in Calgary, for the Winter Olympics, I was just like, oh my goodness, this is freezing. But I was like, I'm going to embrace the winters. So I'm going to learn how to ski. And I was like, okay. And I was always quite sporty throughout, like high school, primary school, all the rest of that. I was fine, like nothing. I just learn it. I'd jump in and I'd do it. But then I had two kids and everything. And then so decided to go skiing. And this whole week of skiing was fantastic, except when it came to the chairlift and I started going down the hill and it was too fast for me. And then I started freaking out. I was doing fine, but it was too much speed. So I bailed. Like I went like legs flying, everything, when you kind of like fall and you do that check where you're like, okay, where does it hurt? Am I broken? If I am broken, where am I broken? And then how do I get out of this position and sit up, right? Well, that moment helped me to realize, I turned around and I was like, when did I just become such a wimp? I was doing fine. It was all in my head. Like, when did I start seeing the danger in everything? Like, what is that? And I was like, I've never been like that. I've always been like, I see something, I'm going to try it, I'm going to tackle it, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it again. I did get up and do it again, definitely. But it was like, when did I get to that space where I was just like, and I joke around, my daughters hated when I say that because they're like, it's not cool, mom. It's like, when did I become poopy pants? Like, like when did I become this person that fears all this stuff? And I was like, since then I made a deal. I'm like, at least 2-3 times a year, I will do something that makes me uncomfortable and that I'm scared of, just to continue to expand that boundary of safety that I put around me. Right. The same as public speaking. Like, what are people going to judge me? What are they going to say? What if they don't agree with what I say? What is the backlash? I mean, you and I have had a video taken off YouTube
Yeah.
as well.
Yes.
So, but it's kind of like, dare to say it anyway, right? And then move through that. So yeah, it's kind of like expanding
And
that,
I'm
right?
still suffering the consequences of that video.
You are? Oh my
Because
goodness.
yeah, because these guys of YouTube, they just got everything that they want and they just put the guidelines and all those things. So I'm just amazed by how much we are being controlled by all of these things. And as you mentioned, as they control these narratives and we cannot express what uh, probably 5 or 10 years before we were able to talk about everything,
Hmm.
uh, we are also being taught how to live in safety always, how
Yeah, yeah.
to be very in the comfort zone and not being pulled by what you mentioned, by your potential. Your own potential wants to do more, wants to give more, wants to be sometimes in danger, wants to be sometimes doing something risky like speaking. Also for me it was difficult to do this podcast at the beginning because it's not even my main language. So when
Hmm.
I speak in English, many times I don't find the words and I have to just pick up a synonym or something, or I just change the idea in the moment. But that is something that I also said I'm going to challenge myself to do it in English because that's the only way that I'm going to maintain alive the language and
Hmm.
maintain my own rhythm and my speech and everything. And those are the things that we have to be willing to do. And these new generations that we are seeing, they they don't know what is that. They don't know what is that because we also, as we are living in this comfort, safety, we want to create for them also the bubble that
Yeah.
protects them from everything. And that is not possible. And that's not the way we grow.
Mhm.
That's only a way to maintain them, and sometimes make them handicap because they are not going to be able to defend in the case that they find whatever it is, that of course that they are going to find it, probably not like we did, but in a new way, because life is about that. Life is about falling. Is about sometimes getting hurt. Life is about emotional chaos and all of those things, and it's just getting yourself up, and as you mentioned, just reflecting what is in pain for me right now, where does it hurt and why does it hurt. Sometimes
Mhm.
the why is also important, because that's how we get to the root cause of something that is eating ourselves up. No.
Absolutely. And I think we've gotten so accustomed to a quick band-aid or a quick kind of like just take a pill or whatever it is, that we don't get to the root cause of the of what it is that is there. And it's kind of like how I mentioned it, it all starts on thoughts and then our emotions, and then our emotions drive our actions, which get us to where we are. And this is how we manifest our lives, which is fascinating. And that's why we're always on purpose, because we're always drawing towards us the lessons. And speaking of drawing towards us the lessons, the other thing that I also tend to notice in the Akashic records is once you define a pattern or you realize a pattern, it'll show up for you in every aspect of your life. So it will show up for you in work, it'll show up for you in home, it'll show up for you in your relationships, it'll show up in your friendships, it will show up in your business, it'll show up everywhere. So it's finding that you're always drawing the people towards you. There will be something, there will be a pattern that's in there. And once it becomes conscious, then we can change it, which is the other thing. Once it becomes conscious, if we continue to enforce it, then that's choice.
Mm.
Right. And then we're choosing to continue to do the same thing, which will continue to get the same results. But it's asking, and I think the biggest thing is when it comes to healing and working through that, not only do we extend ourselves or expand to a space where it's uncomfortable, but it's also reflecting to a place that is uncomfortable, because sometimes we reject the darker sides of us. Sometimes we neglect the parts of us that actually need that help, that we regret, we try and suppress what we did in the past, and it's part of who we are. Not to dwell on it, not to sit in it, but it's to look at it, to understand it and go, oh yes, I do have a pattern of doing X, Y, and Z. How do I change that? It's not about beating yourself up about it. It's not about going in and, it's like, I think Louise Hay say, you don't go into the trash and pick up yesterday's food. Like it's done,
Yeah.
it's done. Right? So it's going, okay, I recognize it. How do I change it? What do I do? And you change your thoughts and your actions moving forward. And that's how you change the future. That's how you change your environment. That's how you continue to live to your highest potential. In that sense, it's recognizing where you can improve, recognizing where you can progress, and then progressing it through action, which is important.
Yeah, and now that you mention, I am almost ready with the second book and the pillar of consciousness. When I was writing that and I was reviewing that and the what I wrote, uh, I was reflecting on that and making an analogy of garbage also.
Yeah.
Why you don't throw your garbage in your house and keep it forever there, and
Yeah.
until you have flies and everything there, and you grow life from the garbage. You don't do that in your house. So it's the same with our emotions. It's the same with the things that feel that they are coming out, and they are giving you many times symptoms, physical symptoms, because those are subtle messages that you should pick up. But if you don't pick them up, something is going to grow. So it's going to go to a higher level until you pay attention, because as you mentioned, you are seeing it everywhere in your
Yeah.
life. That you don't want to, that's another thing, because you try to blind yourself and not see it, or justify or blame other
Yeah.
people for it. And that's not that's not a way to solve your problems. I mean, that's acting like a teenager or a child, and not even a child, because many children make them their own, and they know what they are doing. So it's just going back to something that is even more negative for you.
Yeah.
We have to realize that responsibility is is the ability to respond to life. It's not a word that you should be afraid of. It's a word that makes you able to do something and gives you confidence. That's also growing into your potential, having confidence on yourself, no?
Absolutely. Actually, I think our first podcast was talking about consciousness that
Yeah.
we did. Like the first time we did an episode together. So I love that. Yeah, no, and it's all about consciousness, and consciousness is awareness, is getting to know who we are and who we want to be, right? Which is quite interesting. And I'm listening to Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights at the
Yes.
moment. It's fantastic. I would listen to it and I'd read it because I tend to listen to books, and if I like them, I buy them. But he's got such an amazing kind of like when he speaks, it's fantastic. And the part in the book that I got to today was quite profound for me in a sense where he had just stepped into his highest potential always, because he went through a stage where he was doing great and then he like took it for granted, and then it started sliding a little bit, and then he was like, no, I need to step back in and do this work. And it was the first time he had realized that he was famous. And it
Mm.
was amazing because he said, I was sleeping, there I was kind of like lying in bed, sleeping with the man I wanted to be in the same place with the man that I was. So it's almost like he brought those two versions of his highest potential to now, right? And he was living that. And I thought that is so important because so many of us are trying to get to something, right? And we're trying to chase this. But what if we could just be it? What if we could step into that space of just being the people we want to be in the now? So we stop wanting and we become. And that's the thought process that I got from that. And just that, I mean, don't quote me, listen to the book. It's amazing, or read it. But that quote along that, I was just like, yeah, why? It's not about chasing it. It's about becoming it. It's about being it in now. And a
Yeah.
lot of the times, one of the processes that come up in the Akashic records is, or it's probably just a general manifesting one as well, is write down, who do you want to be? Who would you be? Who is this person at its highest potential? And draft it. Like, sit down, meditate, look, what is it that you want to create, and see it, feel it, smell it, all from the time you wake up in the morning to the time, from Monday to Sunday. What does that look like and then you look at that list and you think, okay, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to become. But it's asking yourself, what can I introduce now into my life? Like, what part of this dream? Because if you dream it, you can create it. But what can I bring into it now? So if you're thinking, I wake up to the smell of coffee, or I wake up and I do my yoga or meditation, or I do my journaling, or I do my reading, whatever it is, if that is part of your plan of who you want to become, that is easily implemented now, today, even without any money. Like, in the mornings, I do my yoga with Adrienne, which is on YouTube. She does amazing kind of like 30-day kind of sections. And it's kind of like, I can bring in, I don't have to go to a yoga studio. I can bring in that into my life right now and start living in that vibrational frequency of what that highest potential is. But then again, it's also living outside of your comfort zone to bring that in, right? Because if your dream, or if you're stepping into your highest potential version is comfortable, then it's not big enough. You can expand yourself a little bit more. How would you scale that to a place where it's not uncomfortable, but it's an excited uncomfortable, like, oh my goodness, can I do that? Right? And it's a challenge. And that's where we start to see, is this life, this journey, is really a playground. It's really coming to enjoy what is here, and it's feeling the feelings 100%. It's feeling the pain, it's feeling the excitement, it's feeling the sorrow, it's feeling the grief, it's feeling the happiness, the joy, the love, the compassion, the change. And once we get used to being in that uncomfortable, change is not such a big thing. And that's what's amazing about, I mean, everybody goes on about millennials and these youngsters, but they are so good with change. It's amazing, and they adapt really quickly, and that's how things progress really, really fast. It's the adaptation and not holding on to the past. It's about moving through it, not suppressing it, which our generation did a lot of the times. It suppressed a lot of that. So it's kind of like it's moving, it's being that agile, but it's also living to that excitement, which is fantastic.
Which is in the world of emotion, no? It
Mhm.
is moving energy in motion is so
Yeah.
it is doing that. And as you mentioned, I was reflecting also on several things that I was listening. First, I will quote a book from Abraham Hicks
Mhm.
and how she speaks about this kind of state of being in the present and feeling it. The law of attraction is not just sitting here and wishing for things to happen and just trying to bring them. No, it is how are you feeling now with what you have, with what you are, with everything that surrounds you. And once you feel good about the place where you are, that's when things are going to start coming along, because you
Yeah.
are getting in the frequency of those things and you are getting in the energy field of those things to bring them on. And as you mentioned, these green lights, we
Mhm.
are we should be doing those things in terms of becoming our higher version. It is
Yeah.
doing the small things that are leading to that place.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't see that just getting up early and do some meditation, journaling, or exercise is
Yeah.
doing that higher version, is building that higher version. And it is, as we also talk about, it is not making the instantaneous solution, I don't know, a mantra,
Mhm.
because people now want everything right now, and that's not how you get things done. And no one has been successful in doing one thing one weekend and that's it. And now they are successful and now they are known and now they have a lot of money. That's not the way they built their wealth or their lives. It was just an accumulation of failures and getting up and learning and then failing and then getting up, seeing the failure or the mistakes or whatever, how
Mhm.
people want to call them, and now learning more things, because as we fail, as we make mistakes, as we fall, we grow stronger and we grow more resilience in terms of facing the new challenges that we are going to bring. No.
And that goes back to what you were saying about children. Like, we tend to create that environment where they cannot fail, where they cannot fall, where they cannot get hurt, and that's what creates like, I realize that even through my own experiences, in that we try and give them that environment that was better than ours,
Mm-hmm.
but we also take away all of that, so they don't build resilience, so that when they are faced with something in life, they can't take that. So going back to the point that you were making earlier with our children, in the sense of, yeah, and it's yeah, it's, we need that. They look for it. They look to fall, to grow, because that's where the biggest growth happens, is when we're in shadow, as we say, when we're looking at our stuff, when we are going through that hard time. But it's equipping ourselves with dealing with those times from the highest potential version of who we are. And one way to do that is asking, if I could do this from a place of unconditional love, how would I do that?
Hmm. Yes.
How would I respond to this person, to the situation, to this event that is awful, or that we're experiencing pain or resistance or whatever it is, from a place of love and compassion? How can I do this from a place of unconditional love? How can I do this from a place of how I would like to receive this, and then tackle it through that, right? So it's important. And I think that the last year of my life, year and a half, has been kind of like crazy, with kind of like ups and downs, in the sense of getting divorced, moving country, moving kids, moving dogs, moving across kind of like from Canada to the UK, and readjusting and all the rest of that. But throughout all of that, it was kind of like, how do I respond to this from a place of, from a place of capacity as well? And a lot of going through that, even if your highest potential or your capacity is to just do one thing through those tough times, like for me, I would be like, okay, what is the one thing I need to do today, with so many things happening and so many moving pieces in that sense? And then self-care, it's like you say, it's just bringing it down and checking in. Okay, what do I need physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually today? What is it that I need in order to step into again, to the highest potential version of who I am. And it's quite interesting, because at that time I triggered my lawyer quite a bit, in the sense she was just like, oh my goodness, she's like, stop being such an optimist. And it's like, no, we create our reality. And it's quite interesting from that perspective, because I could feel her pulling me into her timeline. And I called timeline into her agenda, into her vibration. And I was like, no, I want resolution. We all want resolution on the side. And she was just like, no, and I was just like, no, until eventually I was like, okay, you're not in my highest potential. I need to let you go. And then honestly, once I got another lawyer, everything was resolved. Everything moved through really, really quickly, because of that resonance in that wanting that resolution. But it's like, but throughout that whole time, it's kind of like, how do I respond? To all of this from a place of love, of compassion, of understanding, which was quite interesting. But you're right, it's in the shadow that we grow. So even if we're kind of like, we will hit ups and downs, it's how we deal with those downs that is important.
And we all have those shadows. As we were mentioning, we are used to seeing everyone in their best selves in the media, but that's not who we are, really. We also have very dark moments, very tough moments that are, of course, we are not showing up them, but
Yeah.
we have dealt with those things. And that's where we learn more about ourselves in those moments, because we really start to being creative in how to solve the problem. We start to being more compassionate to understand other people that probably are around us, and our energy is not the best. And we also have to ask ourselves, why am I doing this, or why am I saying this, or why am I that angry about something? And also showing our children that we can be angry, that we can be in a dark place, that we are human, is also showing them that they have permission for themselves to be sometimes in a place where they don't feel good, where they want to recognize sadness or anger or whatever the emotion is. And that is something that makes them also have more confidence in themselves. I was just this past month, almost these 3 weeks of the month, I have been helping a lot my daughter in her homeworks, and trying to challenge her to think more, not just to answer, because many times she answers right. Um, and I tell her, I don't want the answer. I want the why of the answer.
Yeah.
Why is that the answer correct? And I challenge her to explain me what she understood at at her age, of course, at her own words. And I tell her, no, that's not the answer. You know it. Dig deeper, challenge you. I mean, I tell her, try to look more inside and tell me the answer. Think, breathe. When I feel that she's getting anxious or something, I just tell her, breathe deep and release. and then answer me. And she looks for the answer until she can produce the words, because of course they don't have, in that age, she's 8, almost 9 years, we don't have that age to produce complex narratives sometimes, to an answer of a problem that is probably just, teachers now, they just want answers, and they just want correct answers. And that's
Yeah.
not life. We are going to make mistakes. We
Yeah.
have to give bad answers. We have to make those errors in the classroom, in the schools, and they are trying also to protect them from the mistakes, and making responsible the parents of reviewing everything and sending them with the homework perfect. And I say, that's not education. That is
Yeah.
just makeup of education. And that's why I try to challenge my daughter into thinking in a higher perspective, so that she can make better arguments. And I know that this is neuroplasticity. We are changing and molding our brains in order to answer much better to the problems of life, no?
Yeah. No, that's that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I also had a parents' evening a couple of weeks ago, and it's quite interesting because I met one teacher as a math teacher. And for one of my oldest daughters, he saw that because she was coming in, her and another kid were coming in from another place, another country, that the math, they didn't know what their level of mathematics was, so they just put them on the lowest. And he was like, no, you need to move up. And he worked with them very hard to get them into the next class, into the next level, because there wasn't enough spaces. So he worked alongside them to make sure that they were, to test them at the level that they're at and put them into the right place, which was absolutely amazing. So I thanked him for that. And he was like, oh, I was just doing my job. And I was like, no, they don't make teachers like that anymore, because teaching used to be a vocation. Being a doctor used to be a vocation. It used to be something that you believed in, that you wanted to do, that you wanted to change the planet. And now it's turned into, it's just a job. And I said to him, it might be just a job for a lot of people, but to you it's a vocation, and they don't do that anymore. I felt so bad. I almost make the gentleman cry, but I was just like, I was just so grateful that he had supported my daughter in that, and then he was supporting my youngest daughter, which is, they're very different personalities. And he was like, I know she knows the answers, I'm just going to pull them out of her, so I'm going to give her a little bit of attention. And I was like, no, that's great. So like that, he's living to his highest potential. He has a job that he loves. There's this thing that he wakes up every morning, and that's part of who he is. And I think we've lost a lot of that in general in society. And the other thing about going back to anger, anger is an amazing emotion, in a sense that a lot of people are like, we need to suppress anger. No, we need to be able to direct our anger, to express it fully, but asking, how can I use this energy? Because when you're angry, you feel alive, right? And if you don't express it in a way that's safe, obviously, for everybody,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like, how do I direct this? How can I use this energy of this emotion to propel me forward in life, and to propel me into a way, even if it's to say, you know what, I'm going to prove you wrong, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to prove that I can do this, and use that energy to shift you into that, or use that energy to just propel you into a different direction, right? And that's usually what I say with anger. It needs to be expressed in a way that is, it just needs to be expressed, but channel it into something that helps you, that will drive you through something that is uncomfortable.
When I was younger, and also practicing swimming, and going into competitions and those things, and something was not right in my life, whatever it is, and I was angry, uh, they all of the team noticed that I was angry, because I had a lot of speed in the trainings. So they stopped me many times, and they asked me, "Are you angry?" And I told them, "Yes." So you go first, then. And they put me first, and I just took out everything in the swimming, and I took that anger into my own benefit, because it
Yeah,
was getting it out and making that energy more purposeful for my own benefit, no? And that's why I love exercise,
Yeah.
because exercise is an outlet of the
Mhm.
anger that is healthy, that can give you a lot of strength, and that can also direct your mind into thinking, because once you get out some of that anger, whether running, swimming, or weighting lifts, of course, with careful or
Yeah.
with care, uh, that's there is a point in time that you took out a lot of energy, a lot of those negativity, and then you start getting calm again, getting in a peaceful state, and the answers of the problem, or the answers of the discussion, or whatever it happened in your life, come to you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do anything. You just have to let the toxic things out from your body, out from your mind also,
Mhm.
and let and make space for the good to come, no?
Yeah, you're right. The expressing the anger in a mode of movement is important because it gets the energy circulating and doesn't stagnate. So um and doing it through sport or dance is an amazing way to do that. And it's quite interesting because spiritually the connection to cancer is suppressed anger, and a lot of the times it's suppressed from generations, and depending on where it is will mean different things, but a lot of the time is suppressed anger, and a lot of the time behind anger is grief as well. So it's not only bringing those energies like in like the emotion, is actually creating the motion to release those energies, whether it's anger, grief, whatever, resentment, whatever it is, there needs to be that outlet for all emotions as well. And when somebody's angry, they don't listen to anyone except for themselves. So once that energy is released, that calmness comes in, which is that meditative state that you're able to actually receive information from your higher self, or to see things in a different perspective. Because absolutely, when somebody's angry, there's no point in talking to them. It's allowing them to move through their process because they're only listening to themselves.
Yeah. And also amazing things happen when you release anger in that way of moving, because I
Mhm.
remember a story that is in this book that I have behind, and it was the worst day of my youth, let's say, because I was
Yeah.
fired from a job that I really like. I failed a subject in my master's degree, and I was just really, really sad. And I said, I don't want to go anywhere but to swim, but to the
Mhm.
gym. And I arrived there, and just by being in that place, a smile drew in my face. And once I entered into the pool, and once I was swimming, I was just channeling that energy into the out, first out. And when I um, got out from the gym, I saw a girl that a friend told me that she likes me,
Mhm.
and I like her too, but I didn't know her. And I
Mhm.
said, well, what's the worst thing that can happen today if I already had one of the worst days, no? And I was confident to approach to her, to talk to her, because I didn't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
So I said, well, and it turned out to be an amazing night, and my day changed completely. So you never know. And I good enough done that if I had been in my house just sitting or watching something, and I would have let that negative energy to build more, and just make a really bad day. So my day changed from, I don't know, black to white completely in just 2 hours, probably. So that's something that we don't realize, that we have that power to change that.
Oh, we're always in control. We're always in kind of like, we're always drawing towards us what we need. So sometimes when we get up and the day just doesn't start right, it doesn't mean it has to continue that way all the time, right? And it's like we can change that. We can reset every hour, every minute, every breath you could take is a new beginning to reset, redo, whatever it is, like take a nap, start the day again, whatever, or go for a run, like whatever it is that you need to do, you can reset the day. No problem. And it's understanding that sometimes when things go awry, it's just life changing your direction for you. And it's how we respond that's important, right? It's how we deal with that is important. And sometimes we're like, oh my goodness, this and this and this that's going to ruin my day. No, it ruins our day if we allow it to ruin our day, because we are in control. We are not victim to that bad thing that happened. We are always, making our choices. And it's like you were saying earlier, it's taking responsibility for those actions and taking responsibility how you respond is important. And just like something silly, like I think my last birthday, I was talking about how I was like, I'm going to have a self-care birthday and I'm just going to have a pampering day and I'm going to go and cut my hair and then I'm going to go do a sports massage. And I had booked, so the hairdresser across the road from the hairdresser was a chiropractor that had sports massages. And I booked all the time slots and I was like, this is wonderful. And that morning of my birthday, they called and they said, sorry, your hairdresser is sick. And I was like, what? I was like, can somebody else see me? And they're like, nope. And I was just like, oh, I was like,
Mm.
okay. So I put the phone down and I was like, no, it's just maybe I'm not meant to go to that hairdresser. Maybe I still want my hair cut today. Right. So I was like, I just, Googled, because coming back to Edinburgh, I was like top 10 hairdressers in Edinburgh. And I called one of them. I was on the list, and then I said, okay, do you have any spaces? And they were like, oh, I only have this time, which is exactly the same time that I had my other. I was like, oh, and it wasn't only a cut that, I mean, women's hairstyles, sometimes we're in there for bloody 3 hours. It was
Yeah,
like,
I know.
it was a 3 hour appointment or 2 hour appointment, whatever it was. And she said, yeah, I can actually fit you in at 11. And I was like, oh, and that gave me enough time to get across the town to get to my sports massage. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went in. Not only was it a new salon, but the lady that saw me was also into kind of like metaphysics. She had done her Reiki 1, Reiki
Mm.
2. And she said, you know what, you're so lucky you got this appointment today. She says, because 10 minutes before you phoned, my client canceled because she had to take her kids somewhere.
Oh, nice. So,
And I was like, it was just an amazing experience that I had after that. But sometimes when one door closes, it just means you need to take a different direction. But it's how you approach that. Because I could have let that cancellation ruin the rest of my day if I wanted to, or my birthday, or whatever it was. But I was just like, no, it just means that if that door closes, maybe it's another one. Maybe I'm meant to go somewhere else. It's kind of like, so I action towards what I wanted to create that day. And I know it's something as simple as that, but if you start looking at it, we created something better. I created somebody that was in resonance with me. And to have somebody cancel 10 minutes before I called in was the time that I was going through all the other places, calling them up where they're like, we don't have space for you, right? Kind of a thing, which gave enough time for me to call that place at the right time, right? So it's kind of like we constantly in control of what is happening around us. And that's why we need to take responsibility for it.
mhm. Yes, and it is just amazing how finding the meaning, I think it's one of the best things that we can do in order to release that potential, in order to tap into that energy of doing something that, as we are talking, is completely different from what we had in mind, but
Mhm.
it is going to give us a better response, a better lesson sometimes. No, when I failed that subject in my master's, I met another teacher that was very, very good, and she taught me a lot how to read many of these journal articles and how to decode the information quickly from those articles. And I said, well, if I didn't fail with the other teacher that didn't care about um, explaining or doing something, he was just about exams and covering the things. And I hadn't met this other teacher that
Yeah.
allowed me to learn how to read better the information and how to pick up and even to explain to other classmates what it is about, and that made me grow more into knowing that kind of literature and knowing more about the topics. So we end up in another parallel road that is going to take us to a higher potential as we
If
are.
you
Okay.
just, right?
Yes, yes,
Which is true. And I bet you're still using the skills you learned with that teacher today in your life as well.
yes. I am. I am. So yes, it is amazing because I that's why I love to read these kind of articles. Many times I read more articles than books
Mhm.
because I find that the information is graphic, is summarized, and it is based on real-time research, no,
Mhm.
that they are doing in the moment. Sometimes the books have also stories and those personal lessons of people, but the other side has the data. No, in terms of science, it's sometimes better to have the real picture of the things that are happening. No.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also interesting when it comes to information as well, because we're always discovering new things. And it's always good to have the most up-to-date information
Mm-hmm.
as
Exactly.
well. Right. So yeah, and I think that becomes important, whether it's in science, whether it's in literature, whether it's spirituality. There's always, because all potential versions exist, it's trying to find out what is the most up-to-date information that is out there. And it's quite interesting when I teach a lot of the esoterical subjects like the Akashic records or Reiki or whatever it is. I always say, like, question everything, where that curiosity comes in, right? It's question everything, because if it doesn't resonate, let me explain. And if it still doesn't resonate, maybe it's because the information is outdated or needs to be updated to now, because we're constantly updating to now, which is important.
Or it is
And
not true.
it's not true anymore. I mean, we talk about the sun setting. We know that the sun doesn't set. It's the earth that actually, you know,
Moving.
right? So so we understand that now, but we didn't, like, for the longest time, right? So it's and then, yeah. So there's a lot of more up to date information, and you're quite right in the sense of sometimes we create that glass ceiling.
Mm.
We tap that because we need it to look a certain way or whatever it is, and we don't allow for the potential of something better. So we cap it. That glass ceiling is not only in business or in life, it's in love, it's in all areas, right? We create those glass ceilings. And I think a lot of the times and that's why we move into working with our highest potential, because we're constantly pushing that ceiling or releasing that ceiling or removing it completely to step into the space of expansiveness, which is important.
Yes. So how can we wrap up the all of the lessons that we have been talking about and trying to teach people or to educate people in terms of this kind of potential? What is the highest potential now? What is the highest potential now, and how can they reach their own highest potential?
So I would recommend following your joy and doing things with the utmost excitement. Find the most happiest way to clean the floor or to do whatever it is that you need to do. Find a way to enjoy it, and also really go within and find out what does excite you, what brings you joy, right? And follow that from moment to moment, because you might not know what the outcome is, but if you follow your joy and do everything to your utmost potential, that is how you know you're on purpose. That is how you're living in an expansive life. And don't be afraid to take responsibility for your thoughts, your words, your actions, and step into observation on how can you expand. Life is about getting to know who we are. Life is about enjoying. Life is about, seeing what this playground is. And life is about, it's like we need to play. I think a lot of the time we need to see things as a challenge, as a game. Can I achieve this? Can I swim 200 meters in X amount of time, or whatever it is, kind of a thing. So it's always, the competition is against improving who we are and releasing the limits. And it's not about the glass being half full or half empty. It's the glass is refillable. So knowing that there isn't a limit, it's constantly moving, we can look at the brighter side of life. Because if we're looking for the highest potential in everything and stepping into it, if we're doing everything from a place of love and compassion for ourselves and others, then we're living life to our fullest potential, I think, or that is my belief in this moment. That might change, that might expand, but this is for where I am right now in my experiences.
I love that, because I think that seeing the fun, seeing the play, seeing the joy in everything that we do, does come into, or does transform into knowledge, into power, into breaking those ceilings that we were talking about, and feeling freedom of being yourself, of being more confident of who you are, and just the purpose is just going to be what you are doing. You are not going to be looking for the purpose. You are going to be the purpose. You are going to start owning that place, and you are going to start embracing many of the dark side that we were also talking about, because we are everything. We are the dark and we are the light, and we are that contrast always, because life is also not going to be beautiful every day. You will have challenges and you will have dark sides, but you have to just pay attention more to those days, because something is wrapped inside of that negativity or that thing that happened, and letting it out or taking the layers of that is going to bring the light again. No.
Yeah, I agree. It's experiencing those layers 100%. We need to grieve. We need to experience. We're here to experience this physical dimension. We need to experience all of them, but experience it 100%. That's that. It's like kids. Kids teach us that. When
Yeah.
they're angry, they're angry. When they're sad, they're sad. When they're happy, they're happy. Right?
Yeah.
It's like it's experiencing that to 100, moving through that, not suppressing any of that.
They are more truthful to themselves,
They
and
are.
they don't care too much about what other people are going to say. So we have to be students of that again.
I agree completely.
Thank you, Natasha. I think this was a very worthy experience of the 100 episodes, and I thank all of the audience, everyone that has been also here supporting the message of this podcast, in spite of the guidelines of other people that want to silence the truth. But we are here to talk about whatever it is, and talk about how to grow and to expand in these layers and break these. And soon you will have the second book of the pillars, so I will promote that in due time. And I think that I have to just thank everyone that has been listening to the podcast. Ask more questions now in this new stage that we are going to begin in the podcast, because there are some changes that I have been preparing, and I want more interaction with people. So anyone that listens to this episode, I want more questions. I want more challenge from you also. And I will commit to make much more wiser episodes in terms of the information that is coming out. So thank you, Natasha. You are a very special guest, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.